This is Professor LaVonna Lewis. We're talking about food deserts in South Central Los Angeles. Professor Lewis, can you please describe the food environment here in South Central Los Angeles?
So, I'll start by saying it's gotten better, but we're really talking about an area that has an overabundance of fast food restaurants and few sit-down restaurants and markets. So the idea that if people wanted to make a healthy choice, it's tougher in South LA than it is in other places around the county. Well, I think it begins with a kind of appreciation for the historical elements to it. I mean, I think that resources left the inner city and they haven't come back in droves. I think that there was support for things like fast food, liquor stores, but not a demand for sit-down restaurants or grocery stores. There was financing for one, but not the other type of site. I think what you have is a lot of immigrants that have come into South LA, and so you have a lot of local mom and pop type stores, but not so many of the bigger, kind of big print major supermarkets. There are a whole host of factors. When you get the industry at the table, they'll tell you things like the neighborhood doesn't want healthy options. We have to pay more for issues of safety and security. We can't find an educated workforce, all those kinds of things. But what we've been doing is basically trying to say, well, if those are the problems, how can we find solutions to those problems? And so trying to support workforce development or new development, that's kind of the approach that we've been taking. So I think I think what's really helped us in terms of change people's minds about South LA as it relates to development is to talk about the buying power of South LA. South LA is very dense, and so we have a lot of people who are living, 3, 4, 5 deep in one unit. And so, food is not discretionary, you have to eat. And so when you start talking to the private sector about an unmet demand, that gets people's attention. And so we've got new development coming in, but it didn't happen overnight. I think you can change people's mindset by making the healthy choice the easy choice. And so for me, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and I like Oreo cookies. And in South LA, there was a time when you couldn't get sugar-free Oreo cookies, but you can now. And I think that's an example of how if the community asks for something different, then the vendors will provide something different. But you can't tell people to change their eating behavior and make that a hard choice, right? You say eat more fruits and vegetables. Well, the fruits and vegetables closest to me are poor quality and high cost. That's not an attractive option for me. And so those kinds of things have to be taken into account. So I do think you can change people's choices, but for us, you've got to change the choice set first.
And do you have any recommendations on how we can change that choice set?
Well, there just has to be more places on the ground. So for us, when we talk about bottom up, I mean, it's a recognition that before the folks with the resources will provide something different, they have to believe that people want something different. And so we mobilize the community, but we also have the conversations with the elected officials and the vendors, because again, it's that coming together that we think really gets the kind of change that's necessary. Because again, you don't change habits overnight, but you make it a lot more likely that I will change habits if the climate will support that change.
Do you think there has been any unification of the community here in South Central yet regarding to this issue?
Yeah, I mean, when the people that work for the health department and they're asked what they think are priorities for South LA, and they talk about food access, that says there's kind of agreement in terms of what should be a priority. when you go into the schools and the teachers and the principals and the students are saying, we want other kinds of food in the neighborhood, that to me says people get it. And so how we kind of push that forward is still a work in progress, but I do think people have accepted the idea that this place is different and we're going to work to make it better. So what happened was that it was made an amendment to the general plans, and that meant that the general plans for South LA still say no new standalone fast food restaurants in South LA. We're at the point now where those plans are being updated, and so we're asking for language in those plans that talk about not just what you keep out, but how do you use those planning documents to attract a different type of development that makes healthier options more attractive to, the vendors. So if you want to come into South LA, we want you to take these kind of design elements into account. We can't have, this certain density in terms of, we shouldn't have fast food restaurants right next to each other. So if we can have right language that says that. And so that's where we are right now, having those kind of healthy design language put into the next iteration of the general plans. They're already in the existing ones through the amendment, but for the ones that are being updated, having that in the updated plans.
Now, are you doing this through? Is this going through like the neighborhood councils? Are you talking to the councilmen that represent that area? How?
I mean, it's both. I mean, it's like we have always employed a strategy that targets multiple stakeholder groups, right? The community has to be at the table, because if the community isn't mobilized, then the electeds won't see it as an issue for their constituents, right?
Yeah.
And so if we're able to say your constituents are interested, and here's the emails, here's the letters that say that they're interested, that gets people's attention. And so it's a multiple audience type strategy.
Got it.